Okay, so I'm going to do a very straightforward block called the 9 patch, and then we're going to have a little fun with it. This is going to be hopefully a very short video. The purpose of this, what you need to be able to do in this is you need to be able to sew straight lines, you need to have consistent seam allowances, and if you can hear noise, that's because I'm right next to the immersion tank and the hot water cylinder, and it's currently flowing. So, and then you'll learn how to nest seams so you get nice sharp points. Okay, so I have a 9 patch laid out here. It's quite a simple one, no fuss, no mess. Different center square and then alternating corners and sides. So I'm just going to, we're going to chain stitch these. So I'm going to take 2 here, and I'm going to move these over here a little bit, and I'm going to put this into my machine, and I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch seam straight. And the first time I was doing this, you should have seen my seams. I couldn't get a corner to match to save my life. But practice, you eyeball it. There are lines on your feet that show you where a 1/4 inch is, depending on where your needle is, and you can just practice. Practice is what it comes down to. So 1/4 inch seam. We're not going to take it off. We're going to chain stitch. This will do 2 things. It'll, well, a few things. It'll save on thread. It means you can line your pieces up so your seam allowance is absolutely the same from one piece to the next, and it keeps them in the right place when you take it off the machine. And the next 2, and you'll see I've just gone down one side of the block. So now we take it off the machine. Also, when I sew, I put my needle in the down position so that the fabric doesn't move under it when I am sewing, or if I lift up stitch. So now we're going to open these out. We don't need to press seams at this point, and we're going to put the next ones on. So we've got the next column going along, so keeping them in order. Get our threads out of the way, and again 1/4 inch seam. And as we go, we can open out, put the next one on, and you'll see the block is being kept in place. You can't go wrong. You can't put things in the wrong, sew them in the wrong position. And having our seams straight means that we get a flat piece. If our seams wobble, we get bulges. And having this consistent seam allowance means that our pieces will all match up neatly. Okay, so here comes the seam nesting bit. You can open out your seams and iron them flat, that's fine. But to do this, to get your seams, that can be a bit tricky then to get all the points to line up. This is a foolproof way of doing it. So we have our piece like this. You can see the seams down here. So I'm going to do 1 row to the middle, 1 row to the outside, and 1 row to the middle. I'm just finger pressing here. I'm just getting them to line it still. And then, see, you can't get them in the wrong place. And now we've got them. So now, can you see our seams? One is going this way, one is going this way, and the ridge, you can feel this ridge. You can just, there's a gap, there's no gap. And they nest up nicely together. And if your seams are good seam allowance, they'll just set into place all the way along the line without much pulling or hauling. So I'm just going to do a 1/4 inch seam along here, and I'm going to stop at that point just to make sure that everything's lining up here, and without much fuss or bother we can go all the way along. And I just keep my finger on the bit I want to stay still. So that's 1. We'll see how that looks. Well, that's lovely. I think that's pretty okay. I'll be pleased with that. In fact, I am pleased with that. So, and here's the next one. And seams to the middle. There we go. 2 nested seams. And off we go with our machine again. you can feel it when they're nested, they're smooth. You know, just make sure all the seams are going in the right direction so that they all lie flat afterwards. Boy, my machine is noisy today. And there we have our 9 block, 9 patch, right? So what do we do with the 9 patch? Well, we can give it a good press first of all. And when we have it pressed, which I'm not going to do right here because I want this to be quick, we can use it like this, perfectly lovely, very nice 9 patch, or we can cut it in half and in half again. So I'm going to line up these. You can do this on a cutting mat, you can do this by hands. These small ones you can do by hand, so I'm just lining this up to make sure that we're actually cutting down the middle. Why, you may be asking, am I cutting up my lovely piece of sewing? Because we're going to do something interesting with it. When you cut it up like this, it becomes, you get these 4 larger pieces, and it looks like you've done some really fancy stitching. You know, it looks like you've been there all day with tiny pieces, when in fact you haven't. So here we go again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, what do we do with that? Well, we can turn this around like this, and we can turn this around like this. And then we've got this very complicated pattern. Or we can turn these right the way around and we get these diamonds going on. So this becomes the disappearing 9 patch. Now, if we want to, we can bring another piece in. So I did another block, and keep these 2. I did another block where I had alternate corners. So instead of having the swirls at the side, I had the swirls in the corner. So if we just take out 2 of these and pop in to where I used the opposite corners, you have this checkerboard pattern. Now the center is the same, but if we swap out ones with a different center, just by slicing and swapping without any twisting, you get this pattern. If you can see that there very well, you can. So, and this is also a very handy way of, if you want to do, you can also use it to do sashing and blocks, because you already have these little pieces with your sashing and your cornerstone. So you can do that all the way along, sashing and cornerstone. So do a different cornerstone. So there we go, sashing and cornerstone all the way along. So that is your disappearing 9 patch. And if you, depending on what colors you put in each blocks, you can do an awful lot of stuff with this. So I'm going to leave it at that. So straight stitching, consistent seam allowances, chain piecing, nesting your seams, and then maybe chopping them up and doing something interesting with them.